Hello, my name is Alexandra Carade, and I'm a member of Spark Learning Lab's Early Childhood Business Coaching team. In this video today, we're going to be learning about Indiana's Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Grant Program. Specifically, we'll be talking about grant spending strategies and how to document expenses. After watching this video, you will be able to recognize what types of expenses the stabilization grant will support, categorize your business expenses, determine which of your expenses are eligible for grant spending, properly document your expenses and organize the documentation, and consider spending strategies to strengthen your program, short-term and long-term. So what exactly is the Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Grant Program? The Indiana Office of Early Childhood and Out-of-School Learning received $540 million to develop and implement the Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Grant Program. Indiana will distribute funding to help childcare providers rebuild and strengthen their business after being strongly impacted by the COVID pandemic. The grants will provide critical funding to early childhood and school-age providers to support their program's operating expenses. For additional details on the Stabilization Grant Program and application, visit the website indicated on this slide, brighterfuturesindiana.org/build-learn-grow. In this video, we're going to start by talking about how to use your grant funds. Stabilization grant funds are awarded to support the expenses of day-to-day operations that child care programs need to stay open. These expenses include personnel costs, facility fees, maintenance and improvements, COVID-19 safety-related needs, goods and services needed to operate and strengthen operations, goods and services needed to resume and strengthen operations, mental health supports for children and employees, and health and safety training. Let's go through each of these one by one. First, personnel costs include payroll and salaries, recruitment incentives, employee benefits, paid sick or family leave. It also includes support for getting the COVID-19 vaccine, including if your employee needed to take time off to get the vaccine or needed additional time off after receiving the vaccine. Facility fees, maintenance, and improvements includes rent, lease, or mortgage payments, business utility bills, insurance, including liability, accident, transportation, and business insurance. If you are a home, family, child care provider, you can use the time-space calculation, which we will discuss in greater depth later in this video, to calculate the portion of your homeowner's insurance, which can be covered by grant funds. This category also includes late fees or charges from late payments and minor facility improvements or maintenance, not major renovations, which we'll also dive into more later in this video. As far as COVID-19 safety-related needs, that includes PPE, cleaning and sanitation supplies or services, training and professional development on health and safety practices, and business items needed to respond to new challenges, such as software for tracking attendance or communicating with parents. Goods and services needed to strengthen and resume operations can include food and beverage services for program-provided meals, equipment and materials needed to run a childcare business, such as materials for play, learning, diapering, toileting, etc., business automation training and support services, such as childcare management systems, and janitorial or cleaning services. You can use your grant funds for mental health supports for children and employees, extremely important now. Childhood mental health supports could include consultation services or targeted programming. Mental health supports or consultations for staff could include staff development, coaching, resiliency, and stress management trainings. You could also use funds for family engagement, such as parent-teacher conferences and activities for families. The final category is health and safety training. This includes CPR and first aid, prevention of and responses to food and allergic reactions, medication administration training, and healthcare consultants, behavioral specialists, or infant toddler specialists. Now, why is a spending strategy so important? Having a spending strategy is key to investing your grant funds effectively and properly. The investment provides an opportunity to sustain and strengthen your business. It also needs to be spent in compliance with funding requirements. Take some time to perform a needs assessment for your program by asking yourself some key questions and assessing potential investment areas. Some investment areas that we recommend assessing are financial resiliency, staffing, enrollment, and facility improvements, technology, or equipment. We will delve into each of these areas in greater depth. To start considering which investment areas could be a priority for a business, you could start by asking yourself, what past expenses do you have documentation for that also fall into the allowable spending categories for the grant? Because staffing is the engine that keeps your child care program running, how do you reward your staff so that your business can continue to operate? You could ask yourself if you're having difficulty in maintaining or boosting enrollment and how you can use these funds to support marketing efforts. Do you need to make minor improvements to your home or center? And are there pieces of equipment or technology that would improve program operations? Let's first look into financial resiliency. Do you need any funds to make up for lost revenue? Certainly, the pandemic has driven up costs of existing expenses, created new expenses, and has contributed to less income for you. This makes budgeting for your new reality a key feature of your plan for continued operations. Do you need to make up for lost revenue? Funds can be used to pay down debt and keep up with other routine payments. Are you prepared for financial emergencies? Certainly, the pandemic has driven up costs of existing expenses, created new expenses, and has contributed to less income for you. This makes budgeting for your new reality a key feature of your plan for continued operations. Not planning or accounting for these new expenses and upcoming emergencies could put your business in jeopardy. Ask yourself, are systems in place to manage your financial and other record keeping? Having a defined way of tracking your revenue and expenses will make it easier to follow through with your decision to follow a budget. Having accurate information to inform your budget will strengthen your ability to bounce back. Many providers can track their finances with a basic bookkeeping system and a business bank account. Once you have those business basics down, you might consider the use of electronic systems to track these with more ease. The next potential investment area is staffing. Now more than ever, staffing is an integral component of the child care business model. Without the necessary staffing in place, other components of the business's ability to operate are at risk. If you're having difficulty retaining or recruiting staff, you could use grant funds for temporary pay increases or bonuses to push much needed funding into the child care labor force and reward your hardworking employees. Are you looking for ways to offer staff benefits? Compensation is likely the number one factor in when someone chooses to enter and stay in a job, but benefits are also a critical piece of their decision. There are different benefits that can be offered, and they come with varying price points. Employers that offer benefits see improved staff satisfaction, which helps with staff retention. Offering benefits signals to your staff that they are valued and that you support their needs. Also, it makes you, the employer, more competitive in a tight labor market and could separate you from another program offering similar pay. Common benefits that a company can offer include PTO, health insurance, retirement, supplemental insurance, which includes employee assistance programs known as EAPs, tuition assistance and staff development, and childcare, for the dependent children of your staff. Also looking at staffing, you should look at whether you pay yourself. As a staff person of the child care program, you can and you should pay yourself regularly. Paying yourself should be treated as any other payroll obligation. If you receive pay as a W-2 employee, then you would use the same documentation as you would for any paid employee. You will need to record payments to yourself, and having a business bank account can help you in this process. You can also look at if you would like to continue education or training for your staff. Providing opportunities to invest in your staff and advance their skills will benefit the quality of your program while possibly aiding in the retention of qualified staff. You could also use funds to cover the cost or expenses associated with the time off or site closures for you to take professional development days, or pay for the additional staff coverage you may need to attend trainings. The third investment area is enrollment. Are you having difficulty maintaining or boosting enrollment at your program? Now that securing enrollments is more critical than ever, it is wise to consider using this funding to conduct marketing activities. This could consist of designing and purchasing promotional materials, such as flyers and brochures, starting or upgrading a program website, upgrading signage, offering parents incentives to enroll, or purchasing paid ads. The final investment area we ask you consider is facility improvements, technology, or equipment. Investing in your facility can help you meet different business goals and aid in a better overall experience for the children and staff that occupy the facility. If you're interested in making improvements to your home or center, some strategies include replacing your heating or cooling system, replacing your roof or your gutters, providing new bathroom fixtures and toilets, or even revamping the kitchen for more efficient and sanitary service. You could also improve air or water quality. Just remember that stabilization funds may not be used for capital investments, such as new construction or major renovations to your facility. You can ask if you need to make playground or outdoor area improvements. If you upgrade your playground and outdoor space for safety and quality purposes, you can create an area that will be more developmentally appropriate and enjoyable for the children you serve. Some ideas include play structures and equipment, rubber surfacing, pavement repair, updated fencing, additional riding toys, outdoor toys to push and pull, and upgraded water or sand play areas. Is there any other equipment or technology that would improve your program operations? You could update your sign-in and checkout systems, upgrade security systems, improve technology equipment, purchase a van or bus, purchase laundry machines, replace a refrigerator or freezer, or obtain equipment to aid in health and safety. Also ask if you're prepared to carry out an emergency disaster plan. Have you thought about whether you have the necessary resources, equipment, and materials to effectively carry out such an emergency plan? You could establish or contribute to an emergency fund to cover expenses associated with emergencies, such as insurance deductibles. You could get some emergency supplies, including portable kits for evacuations and 72-hour supply kits for sheltering in place. You also might want to invest in text messaging services or parent communication apps in case of emergencies so that you can share notifications with families. So far in this video, we've brainstormed strategies for how to use your relief funds effectively and properly. Now, let's talk about how we properly document and organize expenses once we begin to spend down funds. What do you need documentation for? Well, random monitoring will be conducted to ensure compliance with grant conditions and approved expenses. Whether you think you will be monitored or not, we highly recommend keeping record of and compiling documentation of your expenses along the way. This way, you will have your records in one place and will be ready to respond to any request for monitoring of these funds. To keep records of your expenses, you could create a digital file and save or scan them there, or get a large manila envelope ready for your receipts. It is very important that you hold on to them for 5 years, so you will want to have a way to keep the receipts safe until you need them. Programs using a child care management system can use those platforms to easily store and track receipts and expenses. Now, if you're wondering, how do I make sure I have everything I need if I'm randomly selected for monitoring? Your first step is to figure out your past expenses. Collect proof of payment for every cost you want to cover with the grant funds, such as a receipt or an invoice marked as paid. Unless the purpose is clear, such as a payment to your electric company, you will need to show exactly what you purchased. Examples of records to collect include receipts, your credit card bills, app-based payment systems, bank statements and canceled checks, and third-party payroll systems. As we know, examples of eligible expenses include personnel costs, facility fees, maintenance and improvements, COVID-19 safety-related needs, goods and services needed to resume or strengthen operations, mental health supports for children and employees, and health and safety training. To back up these expenses, you will need to find documents such as time cards, invoices, statements, itemized receipts, canceled checks. Let's go through each of these cost categories one by one to see what types of expenses can be attributed to these cost categories. For personnel costs, you can look at payroll system documents, employee time cards, and the employer cost of payments for benefits for employees, such as if you offer retirement or healthcare. As far as facility fees, maintenance, and improvements, you can look for the cost of your mortgage or rent, and you can look at maybe you have an online portal you use to pay that bill. Maybe you receive statements in the mail. You'll receive statements or invoices from your utility companies, such as your electric company, and you might receive invoices from your insurance company as well. As far as safety related needs, if you go to Costco, if you go to a big box store, or if you go to Walmart or Target, keep your receipts for the masks, gloves, disinfectants that you buy, and document those expenses. If you had to employ a professional sanitation service, retain that receipt, retain that invoice you received. To resume or strengthen operations, anything that you would need to run a childcare business falls under this. So any receipts for food purchases, again, either a big box store, perhaps an online purchase, a grocery store, invoices for learning materials, right? Take a look at your, if you use a business credit card, look at your credit card statements and look back and see what you spent your money on and where that money went, to which retailers it went, and you can parse through and look at your invoices from there. That's an easy way to trigger your memory, and you can look back at your associated email account to see what invoices were sent to your email if you do a lot of online shopping, and any checks written for staff development programs or trainings. As far as mental health supports, if you hired a mental health consultant or worked with a local mental health center to bring in someone to have a training or perhaps offer one-on-one consultations, those invoices can be applied for the grant. Any employee time cards for employees' time spent engaging in those trainings, payroll records, things like that. And health and safety training, again, same idea. We're looking at payroll records and employee time cards for the time that your employees spent undergoing that training, and invoices for any professional development trainings that were offered if any consultants came in, or if you purchased any learning materials for your staff to better understand health and safety practices. It is very important that you do not claim expenses already paid for by other funding programs, such as past rounds of the Child Care Stabilization grants from the CARES Act, the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, the Employee Retention Tax Credit, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and any other stimulus and relief funding program. Now, We're going to diverge a moment and talk about shared expenses, which is applicable only to family child care home providers. If you are a center-based provider, the next slide or so will not apply to you. If you are a family child care home provider, listen up. Family child care home providers can use funds toward the expenses, the allowable expenses, which we already discussed. However, some expenses have both a business use and a personal use associated with them, such as your monthly mortgage or rent for your home. For those expenses, family providers are encouraged to use the time-space calculation to determine what percentage of those expenses can be considered business expenses. If you already have your time-space percentage calculated from last year's taxes, you can use that. If not, you can find a helpful worksheet within the resources on the Indiana Spark webpage so that you can calculate your time-space percentage. We're going to go into an example next of how to calculate business use of utilities, such as phone. For phones, you can determine what percentage of the time has been used for business by adding the number of minutes used. Let's look at a provider named Jasmine. Jasmine's phone bill is $250 per month. She made 40 calls, and of her 40 calls that month, she was able to see that 30 were for business. Her 30 business calls totaled 120 minutes, and that whole month, all of her calls totaled 200 minutes. This means that of her 200 minutes that she spent on the phone that month, 120 were for business use. Using the minutes, she can claim business use of 120 divided by 200, which is 60% of her phone bill. So if you multiply 250, her phone bill, by 60%, that means that she can report $150 in business costs for the Child Care Relief Fund. For family child care home providers that regularly use their home for business and are licensed or registered, you can be reimbursed for the cost of your home and other related expenses that you typically claim on your federal tax returns. The time-space calculation will help you to figure out the percentage of your rent, mortgage, property taxes, insurance, and utility costs that can be covered by grant funding. To prepare for reimbursement of these costs, whether you rent or own your home, you will need to determine the space and time of your home use for childcare. The space meaning of all of the square feet in your personal home, what amount of square feet is used only for business, or what amount of square feet does your child care home occupy? As far as time, first, you need to determine the space and time of your home used for childcare. What does that mean? There are a certain amount of square feet in your home, and you use a certain amount of square feet for your business. Determining the portion of square feet used in your home for the business means finding out how many square feet you use for business and finding out how many square feet is in your home. As far as time, there are a certain number of minutes in every year. There are a certain number of hours in every year. The portion of time for which your home is used for business is how many hours you operate your business within a given year compared to how many hours there are in that year. To prepare for reimbursement of these costs, you also need to determine allowable expenses related to providing child care in your home. Now, we have more information about the time-space calculation, and you can also book a call with one of our business coaches following the link on your screen. This link is also available on indianaspark.com. So if you are a home-based family child care provider, we highly recommend that you take advantage of these resources to make the most of your business use of your home. Now that you have a clear picture of relevant expenses that you've incurred, whether you're a center-based or home-based childcare provider, make sure that you have proper documentation for each expense. A receipt or other proof of payment should show that you paid for the expense, what you paid for unless it is very clear, the amount you paid, the date you paid it, and a description of the item purchased or service received. Examples of valid receipts include an itemized receipt from a store, a payment confirmation from a company or a canceled check for payment to a utility, or a summary report from your payroll company. If you search for your larger allowable expenses, it will help you to streamline the process. Larger expenses like rent or payroll will take less time pulling together than finding multiple individual receipts for smaller expenses like classroom supplies. You might be wondering what documentation you need to verify payroll, employment, and personnel costs. If you are a sole proprietor paying yourself, you need proof of payment like a payroll report or pay by check, bank transfer, or app payment documenting in the memo that it was for payroll for a given period, and show that it does not exceed revenue for the same period. For example, if you took in $1,000 for the month in revenue, you cannot claim a payroll as a sole proprietor of $1,500. As far as contractors, documented paid to 1099 employees can be included in your costs, but make sure that these 1099 contractors are classified appropriately as contractors. And employer benefit costs may also be included for company-sponsored programs offered to all employees, and employer payroll taxes for unemployment insurance and other programs. To conclude this process, you will need to manage your files. Even if you decide to keep a manila folder for your receipts, you may want to consider creating a digital backup of your receipts and proofs of payment by taking pictures or scanning the documents. Business coaches are available to walk through this process with you. You can learn more about free one-on-one business consultations at indianaspark.com/civitas. That's CIVITAS. And you can register for free one-on-one business coaching at the link on this slide, which can also be accessed on indianaspark.com/civitas. indianaspark.com/training-calendar has many resources about the Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Grant, as well as other resources relevant to strengthening and building your business in this post-pandemic world. All of these resources, including business coaching, are available in English and in Spanish. We wish you the best of luck, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Be well.